Hi everyone, this is Marianne and welcome to my channel. Today is the very first day of the year 2018, so I would like to greet everyone a Happy New Year, but it is also still technically the 8th day of Christmas, so we are also going to look at the 8th pen of Christmas from Everything Calligraphy. Today's pen comes in this box. It's actually a box in two layers. The first layer is simply a white cardboard sleeve. The white cardboard sleeve has a window in it that shows the logo that is embossed on the box that is inside the sleeve, but there's just a piece of like sticky flag that has the size of the nib on it. The box inside that sleeve is made of a dark blue material with the sailor logo and name embossed over it in gold, and it opens up like a clamshell, and that is the pen on the tray, and the little box inside this box contains the converter. This is the Sailor 1911 Black Luster. It is the same size as the 1911 full-sized range of pens, but this is a special color, and we're going to look at the converter later on. But underneath the tray, we have some more literature pertaining to the pen, but it's in Japanese. I have no idea what this contains, and I'm not even sure if I'm holding it up the right way. I think this card right here contains warranty information, but I don't really know for sure. But before purchasing this pen, it is best that you ask Everything Calligraphy how they are going to help you out with claiming warranty for this pen just in case. And here is a small packet that contains 2 ink cartridges for the pen. The packet is still sealed, and then there is this small fold out or accordion folded piece of paper that simply shows the instructions on how to fill the pen. I have placed down in the description box the exact link to the Everything Calligraphy page that has this pen, and Everything Calligraphy does deliver to all locations and addresses in the Philippines via private courier, and they also do international deliveries. I also have a video review of the everythingcalligraphy.com online store in my channel, and I will link it down below. So for now, let us put everything else back into the box and let us have a close look at the pen. Again, this is the Sailor 1911 Black Luster. It is the same size as the 1911 full-sized pens, but it's a different color. Specifically, the trim is of a different color because the trim is a blacked out trim. It's made of metal, but it is not silver. It is coated with something that makes the metal look much darker. The finial is sort of like an elongated dome shape, and the clip is very understated. The trim is coated with a material called ruthenium that gives it that dark color. So this is a blacked out pen, but it is by no means a stealth pen because everything is shiny. With a stealth pen, everything is matte so that nothing reflects. But with this pen, the Sailor 1911 Black Luster, everything is blacked out, but it's very, very shiny. The body and the cap are made of resin, which is extremely glossy and smooth. And the cap has a band that has Sailor Japan embossed on it. And there is also a thinner band around the cap. Pardon the smudges on the pen. It's really a little bit difficult to keep a very shiny, very glossy pen completely smudge free. Once you hold the pen, actually, it starts getting smudges from the oils in your hand. But it is certainly a very good looking pen, a very big pen, which we will see later, but it it certainly looks very, very good. I like the blacked out color. I think it looks more masculine than the usual silver trim on glossy black pens. Let me just show you the pen on a white background, because sometimes if the light bounces off on too much black, sometimes the appearance of some shiny surfaces don't really come up realistically on camera. So this is how it looks in a white background. As you can see, the trim is clearly metal, but it is also clearly not silver. Let me show you a closer look at the clip. It is a very understated clip, in keeping with the overall understated design of the pen. As you can see, it really is a blacked out pen. It looks very, very masculine in my opinion. So just to compare, I am showing you the pen together with my silver ring. The ring that I have on my finger is actually silver. It's 925 silver, and when placed beside the trim on the pen, you can see that the trim on the pen is definitely not silver. I really, really like this trim on this particular pen. I think it looks very elegant. I think that there is only so much that any pen manufacturer can do with silver trim. So I'm glad that some manufacturers are experimenting with different kinds of trim or different kinds of coatings on the trim to make them look a little bit more different than the usual. Although I think that glossy black pens with silver trim will never ever go out of style, I think that putting that special coating on the trim of this pen to make it blacked out sort of gives it that special edition look. The pen is very solidly built, and it certainly feels very, very precise. Everything is smooth and exact, and I don't feel any sharp edges. It is not a very heavy pen, even though it is a very big pen, but it's also not very light. Like I said, the barrel and the cap are made of resin, and there are really many different kinds of resin, but this one feels a little bit heavier. And taken together with the metallic trim, it adds to the weight of the pen. And the cap unscrews, and we can see here that the entire section is made of metal, and it also has that special coating that blacks out the silver. And the nib is very, very beautiful. It's a big nib, and I have done a little bit of research on this pen. The nib on this pen is made of 21K gold, but it is iron coated in order to make it also look blacked out to match the rest of the pen. And I think it looks very, very good. The underside of the nib is really just shows the fins of the feed. So it's the design of the pen is very straightforward. It's the same as the 1911 Sailor pens, but the difference really is just the color of the trim. And unscrewing the barrel from the section, we can see that the entire section is really made of metal. And the ruthenium coating on the section is on the entire section. Like even the parts that are going to be hidden when the pen is assembled, these are still coated with ruthenium, so we cannot see a single bit of actual silver metal. On this pen, it is a truly blacked out pen. And here are all the three parts of the pen on a white background, and as you can see, everything is truly blacked out. Now let us do some measurements. The pen, when capped, comes to about 14.5 centimeters. Uncapped, the pen is 12.5 or a little bit over 12.5 centimeters long. And when the cap is posted, the pen is 16 centimeters long. So now it is time to test how the pen writes. We are, of course, going to use the converter that came with the pen. The converter came in this very small box, and there is a small piece of paper that was rolled up inside the box, and it was surprisingly in English, and it simply provided the instructions for how to use this converter with a pen. Putting the converter on this section was pretty straightforward. You simply push in the converter and make sure that it is firmly set on there, and also make sure that you are holding the section and not the nib when you do that. And with this pen, we are going to use the Lamy Petrol. I picked this up recently and I have used it a couple of times, but I haven't really been able to enjoy this ink much. So this is the ink that we are going to use today so that I can, appreciate the color a little bit more. And I also think that it is a very good color match to the pen. Before submerging the entire nib assembly into the ink bottle, I made sure that the plunger or the piston on the converter is fully in the down position. And then that's when I submerged the entire nib assembly into the ink bottle and twisted the converter screw in order to pull up the piston and take in as much ink as it possibly can. And the first time I did it, I actually didn't pull up much ink. I think I pulled up only a couple of drops. It wasn't enough, so I depressed the plunger of the converter even more. I simply just emptied out whatever I was able to pull up from that refill. I never dump back ink into the bottle from a converter because that is what invites mold to grow into the bottle. So after I have dumped out all of the ink that I have sucked up the first time, I simply did it a second time and I was able to pull in more ink this time. Now I am using a washcloth, and this is a tip that I got from Pens and Things. He uses one white washcloth to wipe off all of his pens after refilling them, and I think it's just a more eco-friendly way of, you know, using fountain pens. I like using bottled ink with fountain pens because I don't have to keep buying cartridges and I don't have to keep throwing plastic cartridges away when I'm done with them. So I think that using a washcloth instead of a paper towel makes much more sense. To test out this pen, I am using the same notebook that I have been using for this entire series. It's the Midori MD A5 notebook, which I also purchased from Everything Calligraphy, by the way. I have a review of this notebook in my YouTube channel, and I will link it down below. I have to say that writing with this pen was a very good experience. It was a very smooth writer. It did not skip at all. It worked perfectly straight out of the box. And we already know that this pen has a fine nib, and as you can see, there was a reasonable amount of shading with this pen, even with a fine nib. And because it is a gold nib, I expected a certain amount of flex to it. It is not a flex nib. We shouldn't, really flex it like we do a flex nib because we might spring it. But if we flex it just a little bit, it writes this way, like those series of vertical lines that I just made. Nibs that are made of gold usually feel a little bit softer to write with compared to steel nibs, but steel nibs that are flex nibs will often write more softer than gold nibs that are not flex nibs. So just because a nib is made of gold doesn't mean that we can always flex it. In the case of this pen, it is made with 21K gold, and gold with a higher number is understood to be softer then gold marked with a lower number. So I really expected this pen to write with a bit more spring or a bit more springiness to the nib compared to the pens with 14K gold nibs that I have tested for this series. But I might have expected too much from this pen because I ended up being a little bit disappointed, not because of its performance, but because it is not a very wet writer. Now you can see me starting with the usual figures of 8. And I think it is a testament to the workmanship of this pen that even though it is a dry writer, it still wrote very, very smooth. Now, usually dry writers also feel very scratchy to write with because there is less ink at the tip of the nib to lubricate the tip of the nib as it glides over the paper. But with this pen, it was dry, but it was still very smooth. Now, this second row of figures of 8, I flexed it just a little bit, but it felt kind of scary because I know that it is not a flex pen, so I didn't do it again. However, I can imagine that if your handwriting is composed of big, powerful strokes, then this pen will probably be able to show shading. Here you can see me actually writing in print and trying to write bigger than my usual handwriting, although it is hardly a powerful looking print. It was the best that I can do. I really only wanted to show how the writing with this pen would look if you wrote in print and in bold strokes. It looks pretty decent, I think, compared with the first line of figures of 8. I think that the shading with the print writing is much more pronounced than it is in the cursive handwriting. But as it is with most nibs, sometimes we have to write with it a little bit more, just keep writing with it, especially if it's an entirely brand new nib that's never been used before. We simply have to keep writing with it to sort of prime it a little bit and to sort of get it used to our handwriting, and to the angle in which we hold the nib to the paper. And as I continued writing with this pen, it started to write a little bit more wetly, but not as wetly as I preferred. Like I said before, some nibs require more work than others, and sometimes a nib actually performs very well already, but it's just not the kind of performance that you prefer. So you will have to tweak it yourself or you have to bring it to a nib meister. I have never really been that finicky. I really only prefer that pens write wetly. In the case of this pen, it is a very smooth writer. Like I said, it doesn't skip. It works perfectly out of the box. It is very consistent and it feels very solid in the hand. However, the fact that it writes dry is really just my own personal opinion of it. And I think it depends greatly on the kind of handwriting that you have. My normal handwriting is really just the schoolhouse cursive that you can see here. But if you write in print with bold, strong strokes, then it's going to show shading. But if I write in my usual schoolhouse cursive, it doesn't show much shading because of the nature of my handwriting strokes. As you can see, it is a very big pen, not very, very long, but certainly fatter than the usual pens. My hands are very small, but this is how the pen looks in my hand. Certainly it is not long. It does not extend far out way beyond my hand. I think the length is a very comfortable length both for small hands and for big hands. And because of the metal section, the pen feels very grounded. Even if I let go of the grip, it doesn't topple over the back of my hand so that when I cap the pen and let go of the pen, it doesn't even tilt backwards. The pen remains in the proper position on the hand. That is because of the metal section, which is heavier than resin. So I think this detail actually worked out. Some people don't like grips that are made of metal because they can feel a little bit cold to the fingers, but in my experience, it only lasts a few seconds. Once you start gripping it for longer than a few seconds, then the metal actually starts feeling warm. I did write a little bit more of this pen in my effort to see if it will write more wetly with time, and also in my effort to love this pen more than I should, because for the price that it comes, I think that we really should love this pen if we buy this pen. But as you can see, the pen did not write more wetly than it did, and maybe I really expected too much from this pen. It's already a very beautiful pen. Sailor is a very good pen manufacturer. Everything looks so perfect and so precise, and the blacked out look is very, very classy. I really, really like it. The nib looks so beautiful. I do recommend this pen, but if you prefer pens that write more wetly, maybe you will be happier if you get it in a medium nib instead of a fine nib. And that is the pen for today, the 8th day of Christmas, the Sailor 1911 Black Luster with a fine nib. This is available at everythingcalligraphy.com, and I have placed the link down below. Please make sure to check it out. And that is my review of pen number 8 of the 12 Pens of Christmas from everythingcalligraphy.com. I hope you have been enjoying this series, and I hope you have also been enjoying your holidays. Everybody is going to go back to work really soon, but we have 4 more pens to go, so yay! I'll see you all tomorrow for pen number 9. Thanks so much for watching, and Happy New Year!